We've reached out to Council to address a number of issues. The Council in this particular instance is the City of Monash, and we've gone to the Mayor, we've gone to the top of the office in town, and that is Councillor Stuart James. How are you, Stuart?
Great, thanks George. Well, as good as I can be during these tough times, and thanks for having me along.
I was going to say, you got into the Council back in 2016 as the representative for Oakley Ward. What was it like in those very early days for you, finding your feet and getting an idea of what council life's all about?
Well, it's very difficult at the start, George. When you get elected, you obviously have a couple of priorities that you want to see and you want to champion, if you like. But it's not until you get into council and you start going to a couple of council meetings that you really have an appreciation for just the scope and the breadth of everything that a local council deals with. And
you went from that initial role to then Deputy Mayor, and of course now as the Mayor of Monash. So you haven't been holding back. You've actually seemed to be thriving. Is that a fair description? You're enjoying it?
Yeah, look, that's fair to say, George. I actually just gearing up for election campaign now, as you would well know. Just been going back through some of my photos over the last 4 years, and it's easy to live in the moment and forget about what you've done and what you've achieved. And just looking back through some of those photos, this 4 years for me has been absolutely life-changing. It's the most rewarding experience that I've ever experienced, I've been through in my life. And I look back and I thank the good residents of Monash for giving me this opportunity, because it has been life-changing. And my family, my 2 young girls and my wife have travelled around with me and been exposed to so much throughout my journey as well. So look, I'm so glad I ran, and even happier that I got elected and been blessed with the great opportunity to be named Mayor of the city over the last 12 months.
It's a huge responsibility. How's the hairline cope with the challenges of the last 4 years?
Well, look, I'm a little bit thin on top, George. Right now, I'm really, like most people, having been in lockdown for a number of weeks, I'm just desperate to get out and have a haircut. To be completely honest with you.
We know your pain, and we understand it. Look, let's talk about pain. There are an awful lot of people who are struggling at the moment. They're doing their best to cope with the restrictions. One of the things that councils have been doing right across the city, some of them are passing on the latest mandated rise, that is in rates, and others have been waiving it or suspending it. What's the City of Monash doing in this particular instance?
Well, George, back in, I think it was March, late March, we held what I called a special council meeting to discuss with councillors what our approach would be to COVID-19. And at that meeting, we resolved a number of things to help our community out. Specifically for traders, we suspended their footpath trading fees and refunded them back to the 1st of March. We obviously suspended all of our fees for our community groups and our sporting organisations. And we gave some extra delegated powers to our CEO. Should council be unable to meet, she would be able to make some of those decisions the council would normally make. We also resolved that the COVID-19 situation would affect every ratepayer and resident in the City of Monash in some shape or form. We then obviously went into our draft budget stage and started discussing how we could provide relief to our residents, acknowledging that has affected them all. There was a bit of discussion amongst councillors as to whether we should target relief or have a broad brush along across the board. In our view, there's people on JobKeeper, obviously. My brother's on JobKeeper, but his income now is actually more than what it was when he was working. There's people that aren't on JobKeeper that have been deeply affected by this COVID crisis. When we think of the disabled, the elderly, the long-term unemployed, and there's also been people that have managed to keep their jobs but had their hours cut from, say, 30 hours a week to 15 hours a week. There's people that own investment properties and their tenants have lost jobs, so the rent's been decreased. So there's also all the mental health issues that are associated with something like this. And we were just talking off air before about the impact that's perhaps having just the length of time this has gone on people's mental health. So we came to the decision to apply a 10% waiver across the board to everyone in a municipality. We're the only council in the state to have taken such a decision. I know that there's a number of councils, perhaps 10 off the top of my head, that have decided to freeze rates. But the overwhelming majority have decided to take that 2% increase. And Look, I won't speak on behalf of my thoughts on other councils, but we certainly thought that in this climate, we wanted to give as much relief as possible. And I need to be honest, George, I'd rather not levy rates at all in this period. But it's also important that our community expects that we provide the essential services like bin collections, child immunisation, Meals on Wheels, footpath maintenance, road maintenance, the list goes on. So we, luckily enough, were able to push back a couple of capital works projects, cut some discretionary spending, and be able to give a once-off 10% waiver on our rates for our residents moving forward. And the feedback I've received on that has been absolutely phenomenal.
I can imagine, because the messaging there that you've just run through is absolutely key. And as we've seen, one of the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, in Victoria especially, has been the messaging, and some of it has been mixed. I'm not going to go into whether it's been plus or negative, but it's been mixed messaging, and you hear people saying, if it's all well and good to have 10 people, 15 people outside a coffee shop getting their coffee, why can't we do this and why can't we open that? What are we actually saying to each and everybody? Why can't we have our real estate offices up? Because people want to sell a home or they want to buy a home, even in these times. So that messaging of yours is absolutely key. And I also appreciate the fact that you understand, and have done in fact from March, your strategy there is that of a good sailor. These are difficult winds, these are difficult times, you've battened down the hatches. Is that the sense, and is that the collective thought throughout council?
It's an interesting analogy you raised there, George, because I am a sailor from way back before I settled down with kids. So I've done quite a few of those all through the winter months and the summer months as well. So yeah, look, that very much is a great summary of where we stand. I'm really proud of the group of councillors that we've got at Monash at the moment. There's obviously differences in opinion between all of us. We have different value sets, and we have a lot of arguments behind closed doors, as you'd expect. But I think that all of our councillors in this crisis have really come together and really had a unified front in public. We argue behind closed doors, but once we come to a decision, we're all unified in public. And I think that's what our community wants to see. Not just perhaps the community of Monash, but everyone in any sort of circumstance. They want to see, in times of crisis, a unified government or organisation, whatever level it might be, a unified people on the same page rather than attacking each other. So I'm really, really proud, and kudos to all my councillor colleagues who have come to the table and made sure that we have provided a united front to our community with really stable leadership for this time.
I'm really excited to hear that you're a sailor, because I live at Port Melbourne and I watch the sailing competitions almost every other day, whether it's a Wednesday or whether it's the late part of the week or the weekend, and it gives you a wonderful opportunity to clear the mind, and that's key. But I want to run something past you. Your grandfather was the youngest of 14 children, clearly no TV in those days, came to Australia alone at the age of 15. And he became, or worked himself in a position where he was not only a credit to the family, a credit to the community, but he left you a marvellous legacy.
Yeah, look, he did. He worked for the Melbourne Tramways as a conductor back in those days for almost 60 years until he retired. Almost 50 years before he retired. They grew up, or started a family in Preston, working class Preston back then. Didn't own a car until he was around about 55 years of age. My grandmother never had a licence. And so my father was really brought up in that working class Preston background. Used to walk 2.5 kilometres to school every day. He studied hard and worked really hard and was in the top 10 for the matrics back then, as they used to call it, and won a scholarship to La Trobe University, and really worked his way up and became a senior executive at one of the 4 largest banks, and really provided an opportunity for me. And I was lucky enough to be brought up in a middle class background. But to me, that sort of really empathises everything that I love about this country. The fact that it doesn't matter how much money you've got, it doesn't matter where you've come from, it doesn't matter what you've got. If you work hard enough, the opportunities are given to you to succeed in life. And I'm really so proud of my father and what he's gone through and been through to be able to give me the opportunities I have. And hopefully I can do similar things for my children.
Well, I trust you enjoyed the Father's Day, both for yourself and your father. And but once again, what a fantastic bit of DNA in the family tree. Commend you and wish you every success going forward. These are difficult times, but with that mindset and with that drive and with that little bit of sailor spirit, I think the city of Monash are in good hands. Wish you all the best. Thanks again for joining us on The Informer.
Thanks for having me, George. Have a good day.